Starting today, China grants UK and Canada visa-free entry, raising the total to 79 countries. Joining us to discuss is Fleming, Chairman and CEO of Blackops Partners Corporation, National Security Advisor specializing in unrestricted warfare, and author of the book, The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm Killing Your Freedom. Casey, good afternoon. Always great to have you on the show. Can you just talk to us about the scope and impact of the CCP's United Front groups in Canada?
Well, United Front groups are not just in Canada. They're in the US, the UK, Australia, and so on. But Canada, the one that we're talking about, has over 500 of these United Front organizations. So picture that. Picture 525 cars. That's the number of organizations. That's not the number of people that are influencing Canadian government, Canadian institutions, Canadian education, and the Canadian people. So they're influencing and replacing Canadian values, Canadian structure, Canadian thought with Chinese values, Chinese communist values, thought, and control. And that's the purpose of this thing called the United Front. And they're, like I said, they're all around the world. There's over 2,500 of them that are known. And in the US, there's over 2,000. But these are groups. They're not just individual people. So their impact is very big and it's very, very significant. And over time, it's extreme degradation of freedom. Every time that these people take action, it's against Canadian values and Canadian freedom, and the same with the US and so on.
So I would just like to add to that, Casey. You mentioned over 500 organizations, China's United Front organizations in Canada. According to a report by the Jamestown Foundation, the United States has the highest number of United Front groups, and Canada comes in second, having the highest concentration of the CCP's United Front among the country studies. I mean, what makes Canada useful to Beijing, rather than just simply focusing on the United States alone?
Well, several. Number one, it's a big country to take over. Secondly, it's a neighbor to the United States. So now, whatever they want to do militarily or even non-militarily, they have that ability being a very close neighbor geographically to the United States. It's all and its resources and so on. But most importantly, it's to turn that country, the Canadian country, into a Chinese communist state.
So which sectors would you say are the most targeted by the CCP in these operations?
Well, anything with technology is the first. Technology is the first thing, any type of intellectual property that they can steal, but also government. Anything to do with government is to convert those people into Chinese totalitarian thought leaders. And they've done a very effective job with the reports that we have through our people on the ground in Canada. The UK is just as bad off, if not worse off, with these United Front organizations. And I've got to add to the audience that China doesn't allow foreign influence. Why do we allow it? Why do the Canadians allow foreign influence? And it's usually done through, of course, money, blackmail, and influence. So if they don't allow it, why do we allow that? So that's something to ask your congressman. It's something to ask your politicians in Canada and your parliament. Why is that allowed here in Canada and not in China?
Yeah, you're totally correct about that. It's very much a one-sided relationship in terms of this. And you earlier spoke about wanting to change the thought within Canada to align more with the CCP. And we know Canada is part of international organizations, right? So how does that influence inside Canada translate to organizations' influence? Because it's in the Five Eyes Alliance, it's in the G7, and it's in NATO, just for example. How would that translate into influence in these organizations?
It's very significant. Any intelligence that we share with Canada could easily be shared with the Chinese Communist Party or stolen by the Chinese Communist Party. And it's just this whole influence thing. And then on global voting on these global institutions, it's one less vote for the United States and one more vote for the Chinese communists. So it's extremely significant, and we can't allow it to continue as a brother and a neighbor with Canada.
So I want to focus on what you just said, that we cannot allow this to continue. And I referenced the Jamestown report earlier. It raised a problem that it's difficult because much of this activity is actually legal and it looks like ordinary civic or cultural work. So how do we tackle this issue if United Front activity doesn't often resemble classic espionage?
Through foreign influence. If there's any money changing hands, it's got to be illegal, it's got to be banned, and it's got to have very strong prison sentences. And that's not just for Chinese, but it's also Canadians. We're speaking about Canada, also Americans, if we're talking about America. But any natural citizen or actual citizen is facilitating this, whether it's a shell company, whether it's by proxy. But the laws have to be there. Like I said, China does not allow this. Why do we allow them to completely come in and take over our society and replace it with Chinese communism? And I might add that communism has never succeeded anywhere on the planet in history, ever, not even once. It has never succeeded to where it's a solid economy and where everybody's equal and they're treated equally. It's a grand falsehood. It's a grand utopia that they sell that they can never deliver. And that's the issue. You know, the good guys are not getting through to the Canadian people, but the bad guys certainly are.
Okay, Casey, I would like just one more comment from you, and I want to have you react to one example in the United States here. So this is one that we have covered at NTD. So recently, the CCP's transnational repression and the attacks on the New York-based Shenyun performing arts groups. I'm using that as an example here. So the CCP engages in misinformation operations at slandering the company publicly because it shows, the performance shows China before communism and exposes its human rights abuses within China. So how do you look at this? What are the broader implications for the United States when the CCP can do this?
It's the end of free speech. It's the erosion of freedom. I can actually speak about Shenyun because they actually are a client, and the CEO gave me specific permission to go ahead and discuss it. But the level of persecution coming out of the CCP towards Shenyun and the Falun Gong is unprecedented because they basically represent China before communism, about the way life was, a simple life, a respectful life, and so on, where there was no Chinese Communist Party to completely control everyone and to abuse them and have extreme human rights issues. But it's the persecution that's going on, not to mention the 40 CCP police stations on sovereign U.S. soil. But we've seen everything with the CCP calling in bomb threats to the Lincoln Center and the Kennedy Center right before performances are going to start. We've seen slashed bus tires, canceled hotel reservations, intimidation when they fly back to U.S. airports by U.S. Customs and Border Protection with Chinese nationals in U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So this is American freedom that we're talking about. When you say Shenyun, well, that's a Chinese dance company. Yeah, but they also are a free Chinese dance company, and they're anti-CCP, and they are in the United States on sovereign U.S. soil and should be protected, but they're not being protected like they should be.
Yeah, I mean, those are extremely good points. And I would just like to add to your point about the slashed bus tires. One of the dancers' mother actually commented on this issue. She said the tires were slashed in a way that it doesn't deflate immediately, but it would explode if the bus were on a highway going at speed. And I think if I remember correctly, this mother said this is equivalent to, attempted murder. I'd just like to point that out. But Casey, very good comments from you. Thank you so much today.
Thanks for having me.